Chapter 1. Footsteps No One Heard. All my life, I worked in silence, pushing a cleaning cart through the halls of the same university my daughter pretended I had no connection to. She would look me in the eye and call me embarrassing, tell her friends I was nobody, even beg me not to come to her scholarship ceremony. She never imagined the truth. She never imagined that the janitor she hid in shame was the anonymous donor whose name would be read on stage that day. And when the lights hit the podium and they said my name out loud, the look on her face changed everything. My name is Alice Hahn, and this is the moment my quiet life collided with the image she built to survive. The first sound of my day is always the soft click of my apartment door and the squeak of the old hallway floor under my shoes. By the time I reach the street, the sky over Denver is still a deep blue-gray, the kind of color that makes the streetlights look too bright. I walk 2 blocks to the bus stop with my lunch in a plastic container and my work keys on a lanyard around my neck. My name is Alice Hahn. I am 61 years old, and every weekday morning I ride the bus to Columbia Ridge University to clean the classrooms where other people's children chase their futures. The campus looks different when almost no one is there. The lawns are dark and silver with dew. The big glass facade of the humanities building reflects only the faint outline of the mountains. Inside, the long hallways feel like train tunnels, quiet and echoing. I unlock the side entrance, pull my cleaning cart from the storage room, and start at the far end of the corridor. Mop water, trash bags, the faint smell of strong coffee from a professor who always comes in too early. My hands move on autopilot after all these years. Empty the cans, wipe the desks, straighten the chairs. It is simple work and nobody claps for it, but if I stop, everyone notices. Sometimes when I pass the north stairwell, I slow down and glance up toward the 4th floor. That used to be my world. Between 1981 and 1985, I was not a janitor, but a scared scholarship kid trying to understand calculus and American literature while working nights at a diner. I was the first in my family to go to college. The first semester, I was ready to quit. Rent was late, my textbooks were secondhand and missing pages, and I was eating instant noodles 3 times a day. Then one afternoon, an envelope from the financial aid office changed everything. A full tuition scholarship from a donor whose name I never learned. No explanation, no conditions, just enough help to pull me away from the edge. That letter did not just pay for classes. It told me someone, somewhere, believed I should stay. I finished my degree, got married, had 1 daughter, and spent years doing whatever work I could find. Life took turns I did not plan for, some good, some hard. Eventually, I came back to this campus, not as a student, but with a set of master keys and a uniform that smells like bleach by noon. People assume I took a step down. I know better. I came back so I could keep a promise I made to myself in that tiny dorm room with the peeling paint. One day, I would be the person who sent someone else that kind of envelope. My daughter does not see it that way. Her name is Morgan. She is 23, a senior in communications, and the kind of person who looks like she belongs on every brochure the university prints. Long dark hair, sharp eyeliner, oversized headphones around her neck, always in motion. When she walks across the quad, friends fall in step with her without even thinking. When she was little, she used to draw pictures of us holding hands in front of the library. Now she barely makes eye contact with me if we pass each other on campus. That morning, after I finished the first hallway of classrooms, I took a bag of trash out the side door toward the quad. The sun was just starting to clear the science building, turning the frost on the grass into tiny sparks. I recognized Morgan by the way she laughed before I even saw her face. She stood near the big bronze statue in the middle of the courtyard, posing with a group of students. all in carefully casual layers and expensive-looking shoes. One girl held her phone up, angling for the perfect shot. Another boy adjusted his leather jacket so the logo faced the camera. I slowed without thinking, my hand tight around the plastic trash bag handle. For a second, I forgot I was wearing my uniform shirt and just felt like a mother who had caught sight of her child. My mouth formed her name before any sound came out. Morgan. I lifted my free hand in a small wave. She saw me, I could tell by the quick flick of her eyes in my direction, the way her shoulders tensed. For a heartbeat, I hoped she would wave back. Call me over. Introduce me. This is my mom. She works here. Instead, she turned her head slightly away, as if she were focusing on something just past me. The girl with the phone lowered it and glanced over. She asked who I was, her voice light and curious. I heard enough to understand the question even without catching every word. Morgan did not hesitate. She said something about me probably being maintenance. Her tone was flat, practice, neither cruel nor kind, just dismissive. She did not look at me once. I felt the air leave my lungs in a slow, controlled exhale. I did not drop the trash bag or walk over or call her name again. I adjusted my grip and kept moving toward the dumpster behind the student union. It was not the first time she had stepped around me that way. We had played this quiet little avoidance game for most of her college years. Still, each time, there was a small, sharp crack somewhere in my chest, like ice splitting on a frozen pond. On my break, I washed my hands in the staff restroom, changed my gloves, and walked across the quad again, this time toward the administration building. The third floor held polished wood doors, framed diplomas, and soft carpet that swallowed sound. At the end of the hallway, a plaque read, Institutional Advancement. I pressed the buzzer and waited until the receptionist smiled and opened the glass door. Dr. Michael Hayes waved me in with an easy gesture from behind his desk. He was in his early 60s, silver hair, the kind of man whose shirts were always ironed and whose voice stayed calm no matter the topic. He had been at the university almost as long as I had. Unlike most people here, he knew I did more for this place than mop floors. He thanked me for coming and asked me to sit. Then he folded his hands and told me the committee had reached a decision regarding the Summit Promise Scholarship. For 17 years, my name had been hidden behind anonymous donor in university brochures and at podiums. Students knew the scholarship title, but not the face behind it. Faculty mentioned the program at meetings, but never the person funding it. That had always been my choice. Now, he explained, the university wanted to recognize me publicly at the upcoming scholarship ceremony in June. They believed stories like mine could motivate alumni and inspire current students. His voice was respectful, careful, as if he knew he was stepping into private territory. For a long moment, I just listened to the hum of the air conditioning and the faint clatter of keyboards outside his office. My mind went back to that first envelope decades ago and how I never had a chance to thank the person who signed that check. I remembered the sink full of dishes at home, the stack of bills on the counter, and the way Morgan had flinched when I waved at her in the quad. I asked what exactly public meant. He explained there would be a speech at the ceremony, a brief video, my name printed in the program, maybe a short article on the university website. Nothing flashy, he said, just accurate. That kind of recognition came with paperwork. He slid a single page across the desk. At the top, in neat serif letters, it read, Donor Disclosure Consent Form. I ran my fingers lightly over the words. If I signed, I couldn't go back to being invisible. Students would know the woman pushing the cleaning cart had been paying their tuition all these years. Faculty might look twice. My daughter would no longer be able to pretend I was just another anonymous face in a uniform. I asked if there was any pressure. He shook his head and said the decision was entirely mine. The money would keep helping students whether my name was on a plaque or not. The scholarship did not depend on my agreeing to be celebrated. I told him I needed some time. He nodded, as if he expected that. As I left, I folded the paper once and slipped it into the inside pocket of my work jacket. It felt heavier than it looked. At lunch, I sat alone at the far corner of the staff dining area with my leftover rice and vegetables. The students streamed in and out in waves, laughing, scrolling, talking with their hands. I was rinsing my container in the sink when a slice of conversation floated to me from the next table. Morgan's voice again, sharper now, pressed into shape by frustration. She told the boy across from her that her mother didn't really understand academic life, that she didn't have much to show for herself, that she was not exactly accomplished. The boy made a sympathetic sound and reached for her hand. Morgan sounded tired and annoyed at the same time, as if my existence were a problem she just could not quite solve. If they had been whispering, maybe I could have pretended not to hear. They were not whispering. I dried my hands slowly and walked back through the cafeteria, past their table, past the bulletin board covered in flyers for internships and graduate programs and summer volunteer trips overseas. No one looked up. Later that afternoon, when my shift ended, I took the long way out of campus. Instead of heading directly to the bus stop, I cut behind the administration building and sat down on a stone bench that faced a small patch of trees. The late sunlight made the windows above me glow a warm gold. Students hurried past, their backpacks bouncing against their shoulders, their lives pulling them forward. I reached into my jacket and unfolded the consent form. My name stared back at me in small black letters, waiting for a signature. I imagined it printed in a program, spoken into a microphone, appearing on a screen behind a podium. I imagined Morgan sitting in the audience, hearing it with everyone else. I told myself I was not chasing revenge. I thought about Ethan and Carla and all the other scholarship recipients whose files I had quietly memorized over the years. Kids whose lives had bent in new directions because a stranger cared. I thought about the donor whose name I never learned and how their choice to hide or reveal themselves had shaped my idea of gratitude and privacy. What settled in my chest was not anger. It was something quieter and more solid. A sense that I had spent too long moving like a shadow through halls I helped keep standing. If my name was spoken, it would not be for applause. It would simply be the truth catching up to the work. I folded the paper again and slipped it back into my pocket. If my name was going to step out of the dark, it would not just change how the school saw me, it would change how my own daughters saw me. For better or worse, that moment was coming. And when it did, no one, not even Morgan, would be able to see me as just a passing silhouette with a trash bag anymore. Chapter 2. The Words That Cut Deeper. The next time the subject of my name came up, it was not in an office with soft carpet and framed degrees. It was in my tiny kitchen with a flickering overhead light and a sink full of dishes. Morgan sat at the table in her leggings and university sweatshirt, laptop open, phone face up beside it. Her jaw was tight. I could tell from the way she tapped her fingers against the table that something had gone wrong long before I walked in. I set a pot on the stove and asked how her day had gone. She let out a sharp little laugh, the kind that has no humor in it. "You want to know how it went?" she said, staring at the screen. "It went exactly how it always goes. I did everything right, but they picked someone with a better background." I dried my hands on a dish towel and leaned against the counter. "Background?" I repeated, even though I knew what she meant. She shut the laptop with more force than necessary. "The research program I told you about, the one in New York," she said. "They sent the email. I did not get it. They chose people whose parents are professors, donors, people who host dinners in big houses, people who actually fit. I told her I was sorry, and I meant it. I asked if she had talked to her advisor, if there was feedback, if she could apply again next year. She shook her head and pushed her hair back from her face. "You do not get it," she said. "You never get it. I am always going to be the girl with the janitor mom. People pretend it does not matter, but it does." The word sat between us on the stained linoleum. Janitor. I heard the scrape beneath it, the shame she was trying to push away from herself and onto me. I straightened up and turned the stove off, even though the water had not started to boil. "Morgan," I said, "I am not ashamed of the work I do." "Well, I am," she shot back. Her eyes were bright. "I am ashamed. I am tired of wondering if people look at me and see scrub brushes and trash bags and secondhand shoes." I felt that small crack in my chest again, wider this time. I thought of the mornings I had left the apartment quietly so she could sleep, the extra shifts I had taken when tuition went up, the little corners where I had cut my own life so hers could be bigger, all of it invisible in this moment. "You think they rejected you because of me?" I asked. She hesitated. Then she lifted one shoulder, careless and aching at the same time. "I think," she said slowly, "that it does not help. Jenna told me today that people talk, that the committee likes students who can represent the school in a certain way. Does that sound like someone whose mom smells like industrial cleaner every day?" I pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I said, "People like Jenna do not get to decide your value, and neither does some committee." She rolled her eyes, a quick flash of impatience. "That is the thing, Mom. They do. They decide. They pick who gets to go, who gets the opportunities, who gets to move up. And those people usually have parents who are more than just the cleaning staff." More than just. The words stung. But there was something else in her face, too. Fear. The kind I recognized from my own reflection at her age, when the whole world looked like a door that might slam shut at any second. My phone buzzed on the counter and I glanced at it, grateful for the distraction. It was an email from the university. The subject line carried the name of the scholarship. I opened it with my thumb while Morgan stared back down at her phone. The message was from Dr. Michael Hayes. "The committee has officially approved the recognition plan," it said. "We would like to schedule a brief meeting this week to go over details for the June scholarship ceremony and the donor disclosure process." I read the words twice. Approved the recognition plan, donor disclosure, June ceremony. It felt like two different worlds were colliding in my kitchen. In one, I was the source of Morgan's humiliation. In the other, I was about to be introduced on stage as the person whose quiet generosity the school was proud of. I told Morgan I needed to step into the other room for a moment. She did not look up. I went into the small bedroom that doubled as my office, closed the door, and called the number in the email. Dr. Hayes answered on the second ring. His voice was calm as always. He said the board had voted that morning. The university wanted to highlight the Summit Promise Scholarship at the ceremony, to tell the story of a long-term donor who had helped so many first-generation students succeed. He said they believed my story could encourage others to give. He explained what that would look like. A short segment during the ceremony, my name printed in the program, a paragraph on the website. Nothing exaggerated, just the truth. He reminded me that I still had a choice. If I did not consent, they would continue to list the scholarship without a visible donor. I asked one question. If I sign this form, I said, will my name stay private until the moment of the ceremony? Yes, he said, we will not announce anything beforehand. It will be shared only when you are ready to stand up and let us thank you. There was a pause while I listened to my own breathing. I thought about that first envelope that had shown up on my campus mailbox so many years ago, the one that had saved me. I wondered if the person who paid for it ever wanted to see their name on a program. I wondered what I wanted my daughter to remember about me when she was my age. All right, I said, I will come by your office tomorrow and sign the form. When I stepped back into the kitchen, Morgan was still at the table, scrolling through something with a tight mouth. I did not mention the call. I put water back on the stove and pulled vegetables out of the fridge. She said, without looking up, there's a scholarship ceremony in June. A big one. Everyone in my program is going. She paused, then added carefully, it's going to be a big deal. I stirred the pot, heard the edge in her voice. Yes, I said, I know the one you mean. There was a long stretch of silence, filled only by the sound of the burner and the faint noise of traffic outside our window. Then she said, Mom, I need to ask you something, and I want you to take it seriously. I set the spoon down and waited. Please do not come, she said. Her eyes lifted to mine, and there was a flicker of something like shame, but she pushed through it. I am serious. I do not want you there. The words hung in the air, heavier than steam. Not, I wish you wouldn't, not, it might be awkward, just a simple request for me to erase myself from that room. You do not want me to support you, I asked quietly, or you do not want people to see me? She swallowed. Her fingers twisted in the hem of her sweatshirt. It's not about you, she said, which was exactly how I knew it was. It's about how people see me. They have this image. If they see you in your uniform, they'll make jokes. They'll think things. I am tired of feeling like I have to explain. I sat back down. My knees ached from the long day, but I ignored it. Morgan, I said slowly, who are you trying so hard to become that you have to cut your own mother out of the picture? She flinched just a little. Then the shutters came down again. You wouldn't understand, she said. You never had to deal with social media and resumes and networking and all the ways people judge. You don't know what it's like now. I wanted to tell her I knew exactly what it was like to be judged, just in different clothes, in a heavy accent instead of a uniform, in cheap shoes instead of a campus job title. But I could see from the set of her jaw that this was not a night for lectures. So I only said, I understand more than you think. And she shook her head. Just promise me you won't come, she said. Please, I need this one thing to be mine. She pushed back her chair, then walked down the short hallway to her room. The door closed with a solid, final sound. The vegetables on the stove had started to overcook. I turned the burner off and stood for a moment, listening to the apartment settle. Then I went into my room and knelt next to the old wooden chest I kept under the window. Inside were the few things I had carried with me through every move. A photo of my parents in front of the house we left behind years ago. A faded campus map from my own freshman orientation. At the very bottom lay an envelope, edges softened by time. I did not take it out. I knew every word inside it by heart. I rested my hand on the lid of the chest and closed it gently. Morgan's words from the kitchen echoed in my head. It is humiliating. Please do not come. One day, I thought, she will see this all differently. Not because I force her to, but because life has a way of turning our faces toward truths we try very hard to ignore. I let out a long breath and sat back on my heels, feeling the weight of the consent form in my pocket and the weight of my daughter's shame somewhere much closer to my heart. Chapter 3: The Breaking Point. The next few days slipped by in a kind of gray haze, the kind that makes time feel heavy instead of fast. By Friday afternoon, the sky over Denver had turned the color of wet concrete, and the rain that had been threatening all week finally started to fall. It came down steady and thin, beating on the windows of Columbia Ridge University and soaking the brick paths between the dorms. I had been assigned to the residence halls that shift. The air inside smelled like a mixture of laundry detergent, old pizza, and some kind of body spray that all college kids seem to buy in bulk. I pushed my cart down the hallway, the wheels squeaking every few steps, and tried not to think about scholarship ceremonies or consent forms or the way my daughter had said the word humiliating in our kitchen. By the time I reached the back stairwell, I could hear voices leaking in from the courtyard below. At first, it was just a murmur, then a sharper sound, the edge of an argument cutting through the rain. I looked out the narrow window and saw two figures in the small concrete courtyard between the dorm buildings. Even from that distance, I knew the way one of them stood, arms folded tight across her chest, chin up like she was holding back a storm. Morgan. I hesitated only a second before leaving the cart and heading down the stairs. The door to the courtyard stuck the way it always did in wet weather. When I finally pushed it open, the rain hit my face in cold little needles, and the words hit me almost as hard. "You do not belong in our group, Morgan." Jenna stood facing my daughter, her blonde hair pulled into a tight ponytail, mascara starting to smudge in the damp air. She wore a jacket with a designer logo on the sleeve and held her phone in one hand like a shield. "It is not personal," Jenna went on, her voice lower but still sharp. "It is just different backgrounds, different worlds. You know how people talk. It affects all of us." Morgan had no jacket on, just a sweatshirt already speckled dark where the rain had soaked in. Her eyes were red, and I could not tell if it was from crying or the cold. "So I am just bad optics now. That is what you're saying." Jenna shifted her weight, glanced around as if making sure no one was watching, then looked back at my daughter. "Your mom works here, Morgan. People see stuff. They make jokes. The committee hears things. We cannot pretend that doesn't matter. My dad is on the alumni board. He literally said he feels bad, but it's complicated." I felt something twist in my stomach. Morgan laughed once, a hard, broken sound. "Complicated," she repeated. "Right. Of course." I took a few steps closer, my shoes slipping a little on the wet concrete. They still hadn't noticed me. The rain made a kind of curtain between us, but their words cut straight through. "You were the one who wanted me in your group," Morgan said. "You told me we could help each other, that we were all from different places." Jenna lifted her chin. "I did not know the whole picture. You did not exactly tell us everything. People assume certain things when you live on campus and dress a certain way. Then they see your mom with a trash cart. They start putting things together. They talk about legacies and donors and who fits the brand. It's not fair, but it's real." Morgan stared at her. Her hands were clenched so tightly I could see the tendons stand out in her wrists. "So I am not on brand," she said softly. Jenna shifted her weight, glanced around as if making sure no one was watching, then looked back at my daughter. "Your mom works here, Morgan. People see stuff. They make jokes. The committee hears things. We cannot pretend that doesn't matter. My dad is on the alumni board. He literally said he feels bad, but it's complicated." I felt something twist in my stomach. Morgan laughed once, a hard, broken sound. "Complicated," she repeated. Right. Of course. I took a few steps closer, my shoes slipping a little on the wet concrete. They still hadn't noticed me. The rain made a kind of curtain between us, but their words cut straight through. You were the one who wanted me in your group, Morgan said. You told me we could help each other, that we were all from different places. Jenna lifted her chin. I did not know the whole picture. You did not exactly tell us everything. People assume certain things when you live on campus and dress a certain way. Then they see your mom with the trash cart. They start putting things together. They talk about legacies and donors and who fits the brand. It's not fair, but it's real. Morgan stared at her. Her hands were clenched so tightly I could see the tendons stand out in her wrists. So I am not on brand, she said softly. Jenna looked away, toward the windows where other students might have been watching through blinds. I cannot jeopardize future projects. Group reputation matters. It's not about you being a bad person, it's about image. The word hung in the damp air. I saw Morgan sway a little, as if someone had pushed her. This whole time, Morgan said, I thought I wasn't good enough. Turns out I'm just too poor for your group photos? Jenna flinched. Morgan, don't be dramatic, she said. We're just different. It's not your fault your family is the way it is, but you have to admit it doesn't help. That was when Morgan saw me. Her eyes slid past Jenna and landed on me near the doorway, my uniform damp, my hands empty because I had forgotten to grab anything when I came down. For a second, she looked like she had swallowed something sharp. Perfect, she whispered, then louder. Perfect timing. Jenna turned and realized I was there. A flush crawled up her neck. I should go, she muttered. This is between you two. She hurried toward the other exit, clutching her phone, leaving the three of us alone in the little concrete square. The rain pattered on the picnic table and the metal railings, on my shoulders, on my daughter's bare head. I took a step closer. Morgan, I said, you can go inside. You'll get sick out here. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, smearing rain and tears together. If you weren't a janitor, she said, her voice shaking, I wouldn't have to feel like this. For a moment, the world narrowed to that one sentence. Every early morning shift, every overtime weekend, every time I skipped a new pair of shoes so she could have what the other kids had, all of it pressed into the space between us. I wanted to argue. I wanted to remind her of rent and groceries and tuition bills and the way my daughter had never had to worry whether there would be food in the fridge. I wanted to say that shame lived inside her, not in my job title. Instead, I took a breath and did the one thing I knew she didn't expect. Morgan, I said quietly, you are hurting because someone you trusted just told you you're not enough. That pain is real, but it's not my uniform doing that to you. She shook her head, the movement jerky. You don't get it. You never get it. Then she turned and walked away through the rain, up the stairs, back into the building, without looking back. I stood in the courtyard until she disappeared from sight. The rain soaked through my shirt and trickled down my back. Somewhere above us, a window slid shut. Later that afternoon, after I finished the dorm floors and my hands smelled permanently like disinfectant, I went to the administrative wing. The Office of Advancement was warmer than usual, the heat turned up against the damp. The receptionist waved me toward the back where the scholarship staff worked. A man in his 40s with a tired smile and a tie slightly loosened at the neck looked up from his computer when I knocked on his door. Miss Hahn, he said, standing. I'm Sam Keller. I handle the scholarship data for Dr. Hayes. He gestured toward a chair. I sat, trying not to drip water on his carpet. I'm sorry to bother you, I said. Dr. Hayes mentioned I could talk with you about the students in the Summit Promise program. Sam's face softened. We appreciate what you do for them, he said. I was just going over the applicant rankings for this year, actually. He turned his monitor slightly. We have a strong pool, he said, But there's one applicant who really stands out, Ethan Brooks. He's 26, came back to school after working construction for several years. First in his family to go to college. He works nights at a warehouse and weekends at a diner. He shook his head. I don't know how he's still standing. The name settled into my mind. Is he likely to receive the scholarship? I asked. If nothing drastic changes, yes, he said. He's at the top of the list. The committee will vote next month. If approved, he will be our featured recipient at the ceremony. He will go up on stage with you when we present your recognition. We usually do a joint segment. A young man, exhausted and hopeful, and not yet aware of the lifeline about to be thrown to him. I saw myself at 19 standing in the financial aid office, clutching an envelope with shaking hands. Does he know he's being considered? I asked. Sam shook his head. We don't tell them until everything is finalized. No point in giving false hope. I nodded, thanked him, and left. On my way out, I stopped in the library. I told myself I only needed to return a book someone had left in the classroom, but my feet drew me to the third floor, where the quiet tables and heavy wooden chairs lived. That was where I saw him, a tall young man with dark hair and a worn gray hoodie, hunched over a laptop that looked older than some of the freshmen. He had a stack of textbooks on one side and an open notebook on the other, filled with dense math problems written in neat lines. His eyes flicked up when he heard my cart. Sorry, he said quickly. If I am in the way, I can move. You are fine, I replied, just passing through. He hesitated. Do you work here a lot at night? He asked. I feel like I see you everywhere. I smiled a little. I work in most of the buildings, I said. The night staff gets all of the best tours. He chuckled, then rubbed his face with both hands. Must be nice, he said. At least your shifts are predictable. Mine change every week. Warehouse on Mondays, diner on weekends, campus tutoring when I can squeeze it in. His voice held a familiar wariness. You are a student, I asked, though I already knew. He nodded. Engineering, he said, trying to finish before I'm 30, if I can keep the debt from swallowing me. He glanced down at the stack of bills next to his notebook, half hidden by a folder. I just keep hoping someone out there believes in people like me, he said, with a small shrug. Kids who did not start with much, but are trying anyway. For a moment, my throat felt tight. I think there are more people like that than you realize, I said. He gave me a polite smile, clearly thinking I was just making conversation. I pushed my cart away before I said too much. By the time my shift ended, the rain had picked up again, turning the streets into long, dark mirrors. On the bus ride home, I watched water streak down the windows and thought about Ethan's tired eyes, about Morgan's voice on the courtyard, about Jenna's words, different backgrounds, as if that were an accusation. When I opened our apartment door, the glow of Morgan's bedroom spilled into the hallway. I could hear her talking quickly, her voice higher than usual. I hung my jacket on the hook and walked toward the kitchen. As I passed her door, I caught enough words to understand. Yes, I know the interest rate. It's fine. I just need the money now. It's for a new MacBook. I can't show up to agency interviews with this old thing. They'll think I'm a joke. I stopped. My heart climbed into my throat. I waited until she said goodbye and ended the call, then knocked and stepped inside. She sat on her bed, laptop open, her phone screen still lit with an app logo I did not recognize. A form filled most of the screen, with numbers in bold. What are you doing? I asked. She snapped the laptop a little closer to her. Nothing, she said. Just handling things. I walked over and looked at the screen before she could hide it. It showed a short-term loan offer with an interest rate that made my head spin. Morgan, I said, keeping my voice steady. This is a predatory loan. You can't sign this. She jerked the computer away. I can do what I need to do, she said. You don't get it. I would rather be in debt than be seen as the daughter of a janitor for the rest of my life. The words were a slap. This time, I did not just absorb it in silence. Debt does not erase who your mother is. It just changed your future to a number on a screen. She stood up, eyes blazing. It might not erase who you are, but at least it would give me a chance to look like I belong in the rooms I want to be in. I could feel anger rising, sharp and hot. I swallowed it. There was something more dangerous in front of me than disrespect. There was a young woman ready to sign away her financial safety to avoid feeling lesser in front of people like Jenna. I reached for the laptop. I will not let you do this, I said. She pulled it back. You can't stop me. You don't control everything. I'm not trying to control you, I replied. I'm trying to keep you from stepping off a cliff you don't see. She breathed hard through her nose, then slammed the laptop shut. Get out. Just get out of my room. I looked at her for a long moment, really looked, at the fear under the anger, at the desperation under the pride. Then I stepped back and did what she asked. I walked out and gently closed her door. In the living room, the rain pressed against the windows like a restless hand. I sat down on the old couch and let my head rest against the back. My jacket pocket still held the consent form, the paper slightly crumpled now from being folded and unfolded. I thought about Ethan, hoping for someone to believe in him. I thought about Morgan, convinced that the only way to be believed in was to erase the part of her life that had my fingerprints on it. I thought of the stage in June, the microphone, the program with my name printed in neat black letters. There are moments when words can't reach someone, when lectures and warnings and gentle explanations slide right off the surface of whatever pain they're drowning in. I knew I had reached that point with my daughter, at least for now. I took the form out of my pocket and smoothed it on my knees. The signature line waited, blank and patient. It felt less like an invitation and more like a turning point. I picked up a pen from the coffee table and signed my name. Not in anger, not to humiliate her, just to let the truth have its own day in the light. Afterward, I moved to the window and watched the rain carve lines down the glass. Cars hissed by below, their headlights streaking across the wet pavement. Sometimes, I thought, honesty isn't meant to shock anyone. It's meant to show them the cliff edge they've been walking toward with their eyes closed. Outside, a flash of lightning lit up the campus in the distance, just enough for me to make out the outline of the buildings where I spent my mornings. Somewhere inside one of them, a list with Ethan Brooks at the top waited for a final checkmark. Somewhere else, a printer would soon press my name into thick cardstock for the scholarship program. Inside, my quiet apartment, my daughter cried softly behind her closed door, and I let the sound wash over me with the rain, knowing that the next move was no longer a conversation in a kitchen. It would be a moment in a crowded hall where truth and image finally met face to face. Chapter 4. The name they never expected. June came faster than I expected. Finals week blurred into graduation parties, cardboard boxes stacked in residence halls, and a campus that smelled like cut grass and sunscreen instead of wet wool and coffee. Through all of it, a thin thread of anxiety ran under my days, humming every time I walked past the auditorium where the scholarship ceremony would be held. On the morning of the event, the sky over Denver was so bright it made the brick buildings look almost new. Banners with the university colors hung from the lampposts, and parents walked the paths with cameras ready around their necks. I finished my early shift in the humanities building, wiped down the last desk, and returned my cart to the storage room. I stood for a moment in front of the narrow mirror on the back of the supply closet door. My uniform shirt was clean, the navy fabric a little faded at the seams, my name tag set straight over my heart. For a second, I imagined myself in something else, a dress or a blazer, blending in with the donors and faculty who would fill the front rows. Then I shook my head. If I was going to be thanked for who I had been all these years, I wanted to show up as that person, not as some polished stranger. I washed my hands, tied my hair back again, picked up my old jacket, and walked across campus toward the auditorium. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of fresh paper and perfume. Rows of chairs stretched toward stage, framed by heavy curtains. Technicians adjusted microphones. A student in the blazer practiced a greeting in a whisper. Names flashed across the large screen at the back of the stage as someone tested the projector. I slipped into an empty seat near the very back, on the aisle. From there, I could see almost everything without being seen myself. For a few quiet minutes, I let my eyes wander over the crowd as it grew. Parents, grandparents, students in neatly pressed clothes, faculty in suits that had probably only been worn a few times this year. Then I saw her. Morgan walked in with a small group from her program, her hair straightened and shining, a delicate necklace catching the light at her throat. She wore a pale dress and a blazer that looked new. Jenna moved beside her, all sharp cheekbones and confident posture. They took seats toward the middle, just close enough to the front to be seen. From where I sat, I watched the moment Morgan realized I was there. Her head turned, her gaze swept the room, and then she froze. Her face went a shade paler. Our eyes met, just for an instant, and I saw disbelief roll into anger. She leaned toward the aisle, stood, and walked quickly back toward me, heels tapping against the floor. When she reached my row, she stopped and took a tight breath. "Why are you here?" she whispered. "I told you not to come." I kept my voice soft. "I have a reason to be here. I will not cause a scene, Morgan. You can go back to your seat." Her eyes flicked down to my uniform, then back up. "You could have at least changed," she hissed. "You look like you are about to start cleaning the stage." I felt something twist, but I did not let it show on my face. "I am here as myself," I said. "That is the only way this makes sense to me." She stared at me for another second, her jaw clenched, then turned on her heel and walked back to her row. Jenna leaned in to ask something. Morgan shook her head, lips pressed together. The lights dimmed a few minutes later. Conversations dropped to a murmur, then to silence. A student ambassador walked up to the podium, welcomed everyone, and gave a short introduction about the importance of scholarships in changing lives. A slideshow played behind her, faces of past and current recipients flickering by. Then she called up Professor Marcus Lee, one of the senior faculty members and a longtime supporter of the Financial Aid Office. He was in his 50s, with kind eyes behind square glasses and a voice that carried easily to the back row. He began to talk about the Summit Promise Scholarship. He told the story in broad strokes at first, how the fund had been created 17 years ago to support students who were the first in their families to attend college, how it had helped more than 120 young people stay in school when money had nearly pushed them out. I watched the heads in the audience tilt toward him, watched a few parents wipe their eyes when he mentioned long nights and second jobs and kitchen tables covered in textbooks. "This program exists," he said, "because one person believed that hard work should not be the only thing standing between a student and graduation." The room settled into a deep quiet. Up near the middle section, I could see Morgan listening, her hands clasped in her lap. Jenna leaned over and whispered something, her mouth curving in a small smile. Marcus paused, then continued. Every year, we invite the newest Summit Promise recipient to stand with us and be recognized. This year, for the first time, we will also reveal the identity of the person whose generosity has made the scholarship possible. A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. Students glanced at each other. A few people in the front row straightened in their seats as if preparing to applaud someone they assumed was sitting nearby. I saw Morgan turn to one of her friends. Her shoulders relaxed enough for a little laugh. Probably some tech millionaire or a retired hedge fund guy, she whispered. Her friend nodded, eyes bright with curiosity. My heart beat harder. My hands rested on my knees, palms damp. Marcus smiled and gestured toward the side of the stage. He said, "To introduce our donor and our featured recipient, please welcome Vice President for Advancement, Dr. Michael Hayes." Dr. Hayes walked up, papers in his hand. He looked out over the audience the way he had looked at me in his office, calm, certain. He thanked the crowd for being there and spoke briefly about community and gratitude and the ripple effect of one act of kindness. Then he lifted his eyes and let them move across the room. For 17 years, the name behind the Summit's Promise Scholarship has remained anonymous at the request of the donor. This year, that person agreed to let us acknowledge her in public as long as we focus not on her title or status, but on the idea that anyone from any background can make a difference. He glanced toward the back of the hall. "It is my honor," he said, his voice clear and steady, "to ask Miss Alice Hahn to join us on stage." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The name hung there in the air like it needed a moment to land. Then heads began to turn. People looked around, trying to see who would stand. In the middle section, Morgan went completely still. Jenna frowned, whispered something to her, then followed the flow of gazes until her eyes found me. A new kind of silence fell when I rose from my seat. I could feel hundreds of eyes on the navy fabric of my work shirt, on my name tag, and on the practical shoes that squeaked a little as I walked down the aisle toward the stage. I did not hurry. I walked the way I walked every morning down the empty hallways, one step at a time. At the edge of the stage, Dr. Hayes reached down and offered his hand. I took it, climbed the steps, and turned to face the auditorium. From up there, the rows looked like waves. In the middle of one, my daughter stared at me as if she had never seen me before. Applause started at the front, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. Faculty stood. A few students in the back clapped harder than the rest, maybe because they knew what scholarship money could mean. I stepped up to the microphone. The bright light made it hard to see individual faces, which helped. I said, "Thank you." My voice sounded thinner in the speakers than it did in my head. I took a breath and tried again. "I am not used to microphones." A small ripple of laughter loosened the air. I came to this campus for the first time in 1981. Back then, I was just a scared 19-year-old who didn't know how I was going to pay for books, much less 4 years of tuition. My parents had done everything they could. It wasn't enough. I was working late at a diner, falling asleep over my homework, and wondering if maybe college wasn't meant for someone like me. I could see a few students lean forward. I went on. One day, there was an envelope in my campus mailbox. Inside was a letter from the financial aid office and a notice of a scholarship from a donor whose name I never received. It covered the rest of my tuition. It did not erase all my hard days, but it pulled me back from the edge of dropping out. I glanced down, then back up. I graduated because someone who never met me decided I was worth investing in. I said. After years of working and raising a child and doing whatever jobs I could find, I came back to this campus as part of the custodial staff. People assumed that meant I had failed somehow. The truth is, I chose to be here, so I could quietly pass that kindness forward. Since 2007, the Summit Promise Scholarship has helped more than 120 students who remind me of that scared kid I used to be. The applause that followed was warm, not wild. It settled around me like a blanket. Today, I said, I'm grateful to finally be able to say thank you on the record to the stranger who once helped me. I do not know your name, but I learned from your example. And I am honored to stand beside one of the newest students who will carry this promise into his own future. I stepped back as Dr. Hayes moved up again. Please join me, he announced, in welcoming this year's Summit Promise Scholar, Mr. Ethan Brooks. Ethan walked up from the side aisle wearing the same gray hoodie I had seen in the library, only now there was a tie tucked awkwardly under the collar. His hair was combed back and his hand shook a little as he took the stairs. He reached me at the center of the stage and paused. Up close, he looked both younger and older than he had at that library table. His eyes shone. I guess this is what it looks like when someone believes in people like me, he said quietly, just for me. My throat tightened. I always believed in people like you, I answered. Without thinking, he stepped forward and hugged me. It was quick, a little clumsy, but full of a gratitude that had no words big enough for it. The audience reacted with another round of applause, louder this time. Over his shoulder, I saw Morgan, seated now, not standing. Her face was pale, eyes wide, lips parted. She watched as Ethan let go and turned to shake Dr. Hayes' hand. Watched as the photographer snapped pictures of us with the big scholarship logo glowing on the screen behind us. When the pictures were done, I stepped away from the microphone. There were handshakes, a few personal thank yous from administrators who had never spoken to me before. People said phrases like inspiring story and incredible dedication. I nodded, smiled, let their words pass through me without sticking. As the program moved on to other awards, I quietly stepped off the stage and walked along the side wall back toward the rear of the hall. The applause for other names washed over me like distant waves. I did not look for my daughter right away. I needed a moment to feel my feet on the ground again, to acknowledge the strange new weight of being seen. When I finally turned, I saw her near the back of her section. She had not moved since I left the stage. Her shoulders were slumped in a way I had never seen before. Her friends around her whispered, their expressions a mix of surprise and something like respect. Her gaze met mine across a distance. In her eyes, I saw confusion, shame, pride, and a dawning understanding twisting together into something fragile and new. I gave her a small nod, nothing more. Then I sat down alone in the last row, letting the ceremony continue without my voice, knowing that whatever needed to shift between us had just been set in motion, and that the truth had finally done what it was supposed to do. Chapter 5. When Karma Finally Speaks. People moved around me in slow waves as the ceremony ended, shaking hands, gathering programs, talking about lunch plans. I stayed seated until most of the rows had emptied, then stood and walked toward the side exit, past the stage where the screen was already going dark. In the hallway behind the auditorium, the sounds of the crowd were muffled. The air smelled like dust and old curtains. I had almost reached the back door when I heard quick footsteps. "Mom, wait!" Morgan's voice, thin and unsteady, followed me down the corridor. I stopped and turned. She was a few yards away, still in her pale dress and blazer, but she suddenly looked younger than she had in years. Her mascara had smudged at the corners of her eyes, and her hands were shaking. She came closer, then hesitated, as if she was not sure she had the right to stand in front of me. Why did you not tell me? She asked. Her voice cracked on the last word. Why did you not say anything all this time? I took in the confusion and hurt on her face, let myself feel the weight of it, then answered. If I had told you, I said, you would have argued with me the way you did about everything else. You would have thought I was trying to make you feel guilty. I wanted you to see it for yourself, without me begging you to see me differently. She blinked hard. Tears spilled over and ran down her cheeks, tracking through her makeup. I was so wrong, she whispered. I kept telling myself it was your fault I felt small, that if you had a different job, if we had more money, people would accept me. But it was not that. I wanted to be accepted by people who did not even care if I was there or not. She covered her face with her hands for a second, shoulders shaking, then dropped them again. All those nights I talked about being embarrassed of you, she said, and the whole time you were the one paying for kids like me to stay in school. I closed the distance between us and put my hands around her shoulders. Up close, I could see the way her lip trembled, the way her breath hitched. I do not need you to be perfect, I said quietly. I do not need you to say the right thing every time. I just need you to understand the value of kindness from others and from yourself. She let out a sob that sounded like something breaking and mending at the same time. Then she stepped forward and buried her face against my shoulder, careful of the name tag. I'm so sorry, she kept saying, over and over, a litany. I was cruel. I was blind. I treated you like a problem I needed to hide. I held her until her breathing slowed. The rough fabric of my uniform between us felt suddenly less like a barrier and more like evidence, like proof of a life lived on both sides of the hallway. When she finally stepped back, wiping her eyes with the heel of her hand, we were not alone anymore. I heard another set of footsteps and looked up to see Ethan hovering at the end of the corridor. His tie loosened now, his hair a little mussed from people clapping him on the back. Sorry, he said, not sure if he should come closer. I did not mean to intrude. I just wanted to say thank you again for everything. I gestured him forward. This is my daughter, I said. Morgan, this is Ethan Brooks. He offered her a shy, sincere smile. You must be proud. I mean, I know I would be. Ms. Hahn changed my life today. Morgan's throat worked as she swallowed. She's my mom, she managed. Yes, I am proud. I just took a while to catch up. Ethan nodded, as if that made perfect sense. Took me a while to catch up with my own parents, too. He said, they work in a laundry back home. I used to hate the smell of detergent on their clothes. Now I smell it and think about everything they carried, so I didn't have to. He shifted the scholarship folder in his hands. Anyway, he said, I'll let you have your time. I just wanted to say I won't waste this. Not the money, not your belief. He looked at both of us, then added softly, You raised someone brave enough to rethink their story in one afternoon. That's pretty impressive, too. After he left, there was a brief silence, filled with nothing but the hum of the old Lunnies. You changed his life, Morgan said, turning back to me, and I was worried about what kind of laptop people thought I could afford. Before I could answer, another figure appeared in the doorway. Jenna. Her perfect hair was slightly out of place now, and her cheeks were flushed. I've been looking for you, she said to Morgan, then glanced at me. Her voice was smaller than usual. I saw the program. I heard everything. Morgan's shoulders stiffened. If you're here to talk about brand image, she said, I'm not interested. Jenna shook her head quickly. No, she said, I'm here to say I was wrong, to both of you. She faced me directly. "I'm sorry for the way I spoke about you," she said. "I judged you without knowing anything. I let my fear of what other people think decide who I stood next to. That's on me." Then she looked at Morgan. "And I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to choose between our group and your family. That was cruel. You deserve better friends than that." Morgan exhaled slowly. "I owe my mom a better version of myself," she said, her voice steadier now. "And that starts with not standing next to people who are only brave in rooms that look a certain way." Jenna nodded, eyes shiny. "I understand," she said. "I hope someday you'll forgive me. Both of you." She walked away, heels clicking softly, leaving a different kind of silence behind. Later on the bus ride home, Morgan sat beside me instead of across the aisle the way she usually did. She leaned her head back against the seat and watched the city slide by through the window. "Do you still have it?" she asked after a while. "The letter you got, the one from financial aid?" "Yes, I have it." When we reached our building, the evening light was turning the walls of the hallway a warm gold. Inside the apartment, everything felt both familiar and strange, as if the furniture had shifted half an inch while we were gone. I went into my room, pulled the old wooden chest from under the window, and carried it to the coffee table. Morgan sat on the couch, hands folded in her lap, eyes following every movement. "This is the box where I keep the things that built my life. I never showed it to you before. Maybe that was my mistake." I opened the lid. Inside, the layers of paper and photographs seemed suddenly lighter, as if they had been waiting for this. I didn't sort through them. I reached straight for the envelope at the bottom, the one I could have found in the dark. The paper was thin and soft from all the times I had unfolded it in private. I didn't open it. I placed it gently in Morgan's hands. "You read it," I said. She looked down at her name printed in faded ink, then at the old university logo in the corner. Her fingers trembled as she slid the letter out. Her lips moved silently first. Then I heard fragments. "We are pleased to inform full tuition has been covered. A donor who wishes to remain anonymous. We hope this support will allow you to continue your education." By the time she reached the end, tears were dripping on the page. "So this is what started everything," she whispered. "Someone did this for you, and you decided to be that someone for other people." She pressed the paper to her chest for a moment, then held it carefully on her knees. "I've been acting like my life began when I got into college," she said. "But it began long before that, with you trying not to drop out, with someone believing in you, and then you believing in everyone else." She drew a shaky breath. "I want to help," she said, "not just say thank you and feel bad. I'm graduating in communications. I know how to tell stories, make people pay attention. Let me use that for the scholarship, for the students like Ethan, for the ones who will come after him." I watched her, saw the determination beneath the guilt. "What are you imagining?" I asked. She leaned forward, eyes bright through the tears. "Profiles of the students, short videos, articles, campaigns that show what this money really does. Not just numbers in a report. Faces, voices. Maybe it makes other people want to give. Maybe it helps kids like Ethan feel seen. We can do it together." There was a soft knock in my chest, like a door opening. "We'll talk to Dr. Hayes, see what they think. I don't know all the rules, but I know they like people who are willing to do the work." She smiled, small but real. "Good thing I was raised by someone who never stopped working." A week later, I sat in Dr. Hayes' office again, this time with Morgan. In the chair beside me, he told me the university would be honored to have me serve on the selection committee for the Summit Promise Scholarship starting next year. He spoke of my lived experience, my insight into what real need looked like. I listened, nodded, and accepted. Then Morgan pitched her idea for a storytelling series about the scholarship recipients. She spoke with the confidence that did not depend on anyone else at the table. By the time she finished, Sam from the scholarship office was already scribbling notes. When we walked back out into the hallway, the late afternoon sun slanted through the windows, lighting up the dust in the air like tiny sparks. No one won and no one lost, I thought. We just took off the costumes we had been wearing for too long and stood in front of each other as we really were. A woman who cleaned classrooms at dawn, a young graduate who had been ashamed until she learned the whole story, a scholarship kid turned donor, a campus full of lies that intersected in ways they could not see from the outside. If you are hearing this, maybe you know what it feels like to be unseen, or to misjudge someone whose shoes you have never walked in. I learned that you do not have to shout to change how people see you. You keep showing up. You do the work. You let your kindness build a record that speaks louder than any rumor. And when the moment comes, when truth finally steps into the light, it has a way of rearranging the whole room. So if there is someone you have written off or some part of yourself you have been hiding, remember my little kitchen, that crowded hall, and the scholarship letter that started it all. Stay a while. Listen to stories like this. Share them if they touch something in you. And let them remind you that patience and quiet courage can turn even the heaviest shame into something that looks a lot like grace.